From the Ear to There Travel Studio, this is the Ear to There Disney Podcast.
The Ear to There Podcast, it's time to start the show. Be sure to hold on tight, here we go. Exploring all the different Disney destinations. Ear to There, it's time to start the fun.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Ear to There Disney Podcast, Walt Disney World Word of the Week. I'm your host, Phil Gramlich, and each and every week I will bring you a different Walt Disney World word and then bring you some tips, tricks, hints, background information, all kinds of stuff about that word. Just think of it as filling your Disney fix in 15 minutes or less. Sometimes it's a lot more, sometimes it's a little less. Or a lot less. Listen, I'm all across the board. I go for 15 minutes. I try for 15 minutes. But basically, you get what you get. And of course, before I start this week's Word of the Week, it's time for the What About Bob segment of the show. This is where I bring on Disney legend and Imagineer, Mr. Bob Gurr. If you don't know who Bob Gurr is, let me give you a quick background on Bob. He was hired personally by Walt Disney himself in 1954. He's one of the original Disney Imagineers. He worked on Disneyland before Disneyland was even a thing. And he designed such things as the monorails, the Matterhorn, the Haunted Mansion, Doom Buggies, all of the Omnimover attractions, the submarines in both parks, the Autopia, the Tomorrowland Speedway. I can go on and on and on. He built all of that, and he stops by each and every week to answer your question here on the show. So if you have a question for Bob, please call the voice line. The phone number is 267-551-1971. Or you can always email me that question at phil@ear2theretravel.com. And just remember, the What About Bob segment of the show is brought to you by the Waltland Bus Tour. Each month, Bob rides along with a busload of guests on the tour. He is the narrator. He is the host. And you go all over California, from Burbank to Los Angeles to Glendale, and check out all of the famous and historical spots in the history of the Disney company, and in particular in the history and the life of Walt Disney. If you are interested in going on one of the upcoming tours, you can get tickets over at waltland.com. And as I do every week before Bob comes on, we have to kick it off with Bob's theme song.
It's What About Bob, Bob Gurr the legend, creator of the Matterhorn, the monorails and the Haunted Mansion. What about Bob, the Disney legend?
All right, Bob, this one comes from Sean in Philadelphia, my neck of the woods. He wants to know, can you tell the story about what happened with Vice President Nixon and the monorail?
We're building the monorail, and 2 weeks before we were going to dedicate it, we got the train set on the beamway. And in that 2 weeks, we finished assembling it and testing it every day, and it broke down every day, except the day before the dedication. We were also going to have a 90-minute black and white live TV program, and the monorail had to perform with a ribbon cutting. And so I parked the monorail right at the platform rather than taking it back to the service area, because I knew that if we were going to have a live television to get their shot, all I got to do is have it drive away far enough so it's out of the shot, and then it could break down again. It'd be okay. That was the plan. But about 11 o'clock in the morning, a really hot day, here comes Walt, and he's got security with him, and oh my God, he's got the Vice President of the United States, his wife, the two girls, and some Secret Service guys. And Walt wanted to show off something he had that nobody else had. So he came up and looked at the train, and then there was, he says, well, Bobby, let's go inside it. And I said, just give me a few minutes. I got to turn the air conditioning on because it's pretty hot. So as soon as it got cooled down, I opened the door, and we all piled into the cab. And so Walt introduces everybody all the way around, and Nixon's a good friend. His name, he calls him Dick. In fact, I got a copy of the letter to the White House. Say, dear Dick, bring your wife out. We're going to cut a ribbon. If you need more room in the hotel for security guys, well, I'll give that to you. So anyway, he says, "Oh, well, Dick, I'm the steam guy. I drive the steam locomotives here, but this is new, advanced, modern electric transportation, so I have Bobby drive it." Pause. Well, Bobby, give him a ride. I just drove off. I drove off, and in those days, the train would go out, make a right turn, then make a left turn, come back down over the subride, which meant Nixon could see that on the load platform, all the Secret Service guys, I think it was 4 or 5 of them, they're there, which meant none of the Secret Service are in the train. Now, of course, there's a presidential history fact that the presidents always want to dump the Secret Service, try to escape, and they never can escape. I mean, it's just one of those things they always want to do, and they can never do it. And apparently Nixon caught on in an instant that he is successful. He has escaped the Secret Service. And of course, he let out some 4-letter words, which I can't repeat. And then we came around the platform, and I thought, oh my God, it was the guy going to stop back where the ribbon's going to go. And then the girl said, let's go again. And Walt said, give him another ride. And I can't even remember the second lap around. I was heartsick that, oh my God, we're going to miss the shot. Can't get the ribbon cutting. And besides, if it catches on fire again and it catches on fire over the subride, we don't have the evacuation ladders or anything out there. We'll burn that president up. Of course, that would have saved him all that Watergate history later. But
true.
yeah, well, we got back to the platform in a second lap, and we all got out and walked down the end of the platform, and Nixon turns around, and he looks up at the platform, and would you believe the Secret Service guys were sitting in the train, because when I went through the first time, they were running with it, trying to get in it. They were that desperate to resume their duties of protecting the president. But anyway, it was kind of funny. And then I went back up the platform, and a German engineer that had been helping me from time to time, a guy by the name of Konrad Deller, the guy was just furious. And he says, Mr. Bob, in Germany, we spend 7 years and 7 million marks, developed the monorail, and we never let the public on it. And you stupid Disney people, you get it running one day and you put your vice president on it. And he was furious. And I said, Conrad, this is the Disney way.
Wait, so it had been on fire recently, right before that?
Oh, yeah, we had trouble with that every day. But Conrad and I would go over to the hotel at the end of the day and drink a bottle of Christian Brothers white wine, and then we'd sit there and make sketches of, well, what part should we get done? And then a Disneyland truck would drive up to the studio at midnight, put the drawings in our graveyard shift at the shop, and then the next morning, the other Disneyland truck would bring the parts down in the morning, and we'd install them in the train, and we resumed the tests again. We did that every day for 2 weeks.
Oh, wow.
And then came the day that the next day is the live TV program, which certainly was not going to, nobody knew Nixon was going to be in it. But I was just concerned that I need to park it where the ribbon cutting goes, and then the train can drive off and break, and everything will be okay.
That's a great story, Bob. Thank you for telling me. I know you've told it a million times, but I appreciate it. Such a great story. Thank you again to Bob Gurr for coming on and answering another question. Thank you to Sean from Philadelphia for sending that question in. And again, if you want to get your question answered by Bob on the show, please call the voice line at 267-551-1971, or you can email me at phil@ear2theretravel.com. Okay, on to this week's Ear to There podcast, Walt Disney World Word of the Week. And this week's word of the week is brought to you by the letter X. And you might be thinking, I have a great word for X, but guess what? It's a stretch. Actually, it's a super stretch, if I can steal the term. Bonus points if you know where that line is from in Walt Disney World. But yeah, this one is a super stretch. So we're going with X for X'd. Yeah, like X'd out or crossed out. Yeah, listen, it's a stretch, okay? I admit it. But this week I wanted to talk all about those attractions, those parks, all of those things that were once on Disney's to-do list, and they crossed them off. So I want to talk about attractions and parks and places in Walt Disney World that were never built. And there are a lot of them. I did a little bit of research this week, and there are a ton of places that Walt Disney World even announced that they were going to build, and they didn't build. And this is just Walt Disney World. There's a lot more around the world, around the country, out at Disneyland. But for the sake of brevity this week, I'm only going to focus on Walt Disney World. So let's talk resorts. What resorts were once on the drawing board for Walt Disney World that eventually got the axe? Or the axe. Maybe I'm doing this wrong. I'm going to say the X just because it gives me an easy out for this episode. Let's start off with Disney's Asian Resort. Now, in the 1960s, this Asian resort was planned to be installed in Walt Disney World. It was set to open in 1974, 3 years after, of course, the opening of Walt Disney World on October 1st, 1971. The hotel was to be inspired by the culture of Thailand, and a plot of land was even set aside alongside the Seven Seas Lagoon back in the early 1970s for that hotel to be built on. There was even an access road called Asian Way, and Asian Way was going to be the road that led to the Asian resort. Well, what happened? The oil crisis in 1973 led to the complete cancellation of the Asian resort, along with 2 other resorts that I'll mention in a second. And that road, Asian Way, was changed eventually to Floridian Way when Disney's Grand Floridian Resort and Spa was built on the spot where the Asian resort was supposed to go. Now, those other 2 resorts that were supposed to be built alongside the Asian resort were Disney's Venetian Resort. That one was scheduled to open with the rest of Walt Disney World on October 1st, 1971. And of course, it was modeled after Venice, Italy. And the Persian Resort. Now, the Persian Resort, I couldn't find a legit opening day kind of for, but it would have been a resort that's laid out in a circle with a central building that would have had a 24-foot dome on the main building, which it would have housed the entrance and the meeting facilities. Now, the Persian Resort, in the early sketches, it looked like the monorail was going to leave Tomorrowland, and its first stop wouldn't be the Contemporary. No, it would be the Persian Resort. But again, due to that oil crisis in 1973, both the Venetian Resort and the Persian Resort were shelved for good. Kind of a cool story that in 1978, it was rumored that the Shah of Iran, Mohammad Reza Shah Pahlavi, I hope I pronounced that right. If I didn't, somebody can let me know. But he actually offered to fund the construction of the resort, the Persian Resort. But after the Iranian Revolution, then the project was permanently shelved. Disney did not take him up on it, and we never got the Persian Resort. Now, in the 1990s, Michael Eisner noted how well the Grand Floridian Resort was doing. It had become Disney's flagship resort. Basically, the resort was for lack of better words, it was kicking butt and taking names. So they decided to shelve permanently the idea of the other resorts that they had thought about for the opening of the parks and to build a Mediterranean resort. Now, this Mediterranean resort was going to be built around the Seven Seas Lagoon. It would have been a monorail resort, and it would rival the size of the Grand Floridian. And not only the size, the luxury, the service. It was going to be a 5-star Disney resort as well. Now, this one was going to be built in between the Transportation and Ticket Center and Disney's Contemporary Resort. Did I say that right? Contemporary Resort. That's hard to say. Anyway, that was the site where originally the Venetian Resort was going to go, but Michael Eisner decided that this was a better fit. Well, what happened? Well, when they went to go clear the ground to install and build this resort, it was a very swampy region, and they decided it wouldn't support a 5-star resort. In April of 2010, Disney fans got all excited again because Disney cleared off that area where the Mediterranean resort was going to go. But it wasn't meant to be, as that area was just cleared for better sightlines for those riding on the Walt Disney World monorail. Then also rumored to open in the 1990s under the leadership of Michael Eisner was the Fort Wilderness Junction. This was going to be a 600-room hotel in between Fort Wilderness and Disney's Wilderness Lodge hotels. This one was going to be pretty close to the layout of Disney's Boardwalk, but of course it would have been Wild West themed. It would have had the horse-drawn carriages, the dirt roads, and it would have had a copy of Buffalo Bill's Wild West show from Disneyland Paris. Of course, with the recession in 1992, Fort Wilderness Junction was never built. Actually, ground was never even broken, and that resort was shelved. So those are the resorts that were planned for Walt Disney World that never were built. Let's talk about some of those lands, because there were a lot of lands that were planned and even announced for Walt Disney World that were never ever built. Let's go to Epcot first and start talking about some of the pavilions of World Showcase that were either announced or were rumored and were never built. There was once going to be a Costa Rica pavilion in Epcot. There was supposed to be a Equatorial Africa pavilion, which would have featured a 60-foot large treehouse. There was going to be an Iran pavilion, but like the Persian resort that I mentioned earlier, after the Iranian Revolution, that one was shelved. There was going to be an Israel pavilion. That one was even advertised on billboards in Epcot when it opened. That was going to have a recreated ancient Jerusalem with a courtyard stage, an open-air restaurant. That remained unbuilt because of budget problems and then eventually security issues regarding Israel. There was to be the Puerto Rico pavilion that was going to be a part of the Phase 2 expansion of Epcot. Another part of the Phase 2 expansion of Epcot was the Soviet Union pavilion. Imagine that. That would have been based on the Moscow Kremlin and dominated by a replica of St. Basil's Cathedral. Another one that was announced and on billboards in 1986 was the Spain Pavilion. This would have had design elements blending Barcelona and Madrid. That was supposed to have a film and a boat attraction that was going to be close in concept to Mexico's. Of course, that was never built. There was to be a Switzerland Pavilion that was going to bring in a Matterhorn-style attraction to Epcot. Again, as this show is going, that one was never built. The United Arab Emirates Pavilion was never built. That was going to have a magic carpet ride attraction and also a show that focused on how the Middle Eastern countries paved the way for different types of life and science. And also, the last pavilion that was mentioned was the Venezuela Pavilion. That was going to include a waterfall and a high-rise built into a cliff and also an aerial tram attraction. So again, none of those were ever built at Epcot. Who knows what's coming to World Showcase? We don't know, besides the attractions that were already kind of mentioned out at D23. Now let's talk what was coming to Hollywood Studios. Now in the late 1980s, there was a rumor of Mickey's Movie Land. That was going to be a part of Hollywood Studios when it opened. That was scrapped, and elements of that land went to the Magic of Disney Animation and the Monsters Sound Show, which eventually became Sounds Dangerous. How about the Muppet Studios was supposed to be built somewhere between 1989 and 1991. This was going to be dedicated to the Muppets, and it was going to go over around the area where Muppet Vision 3D is now. Only Muppet Vision 3D was built, and Disney was in negotiations to bring the Muppets to Hollywood Studios in a much larger capacity. But then, with the death of Jim Henson in 1991, all of that stuff was put on hold. They were supposed to actually be the Great Muppet Movie Ride. Yeah, it sounds a lot like the Great Movie Ride because that's what it was going to be. You would take a tram through the Muppet versions of famous movies. And there was also going to be the Swedish Chef Video Cooking School and the Great Gonzo's Pandemonium Pizza Parlor restaurants. So all of that was scrapped with the death of Jim Henson in 1991. But now we currently have the Muppets Courtyard section of the park. And it's like a mini land. You have the Muppet Vision 3D, and we have Mama Melrose, which was rumored to get a facelift, but so far it hasn't. And the new Muppet-themed restaurant, Pizza Rizzo. Then also, this is one that I really wish had come kind of to fruition, was Roger Rabbit's Hollywood. It was a land coming to Hollywood studios between 1989 and 1992. This was going to be an extension of Sunset Boulevard that was going to be based on, of course, the film Who Framed Roger Rabbit. There would have been a Maroon Studios. There was a red car trolley line that would ride up and down the street. There was going to be a Baby Herman's Runaway Baby Buggy attraction and a Benny the Cab attraction, which eventually went on to be converted into Roger Rabbit's cartoon spin out in Disneyland. Now, this one was never built because there was a dispute over the use of characters between Steven Spielberg's Amblin Entertainment and Disney, so all of that was put on hold and eventually shelved. And of course, Roger Rabbit has been all but totally erased in the parks. Once in a while, you'll see him, on Easter or a special event, but you don't see a whole lot of Roger these days. Now, coming to Disney's Animal Kingdom, this was a big one. Somewhere between the years of the opening of the park in 1998 and 2011, I know it's a big chunk of time, there were always rumors of Beastly Kingdom coming to Disney's Animal Kingdom. That was going to be a mythical kind of themed land that would have the, of course, mythical animals that were promised with Disney's Animal Kingdom. But there were budget cuts, as a lot of Disney things have, and it was not included with the opening of the park. Instead, we got the temporary land Camp Mini Mickey, and that was temporary for over a decade. Eventually, the land that was going to be used for Beastly Kingdom was turned into Pandora, the world of Avatar. And honestly, I don't think a whole lot of people are complaining about that these days. Now let's talk just briefly and quickly about attractions, because I could talk about this all day. I'm just going to name the attractions and give very, very quick kind of overviews of what they would have been. Of course, the Western River, we're going to start with Magic Kingdom. So the Western River Expedition was supposed to go over in the Frontierland section of Magic Kingdom. That didn't open with the original Magic Kingdom in 1971. It was supposed to be part of Phase 2. But of course, when people got to Magic Kingdom, they wanted to know, where's the Pirates ride? Where's the Pirates ride? So that was scrapped in favor of Pirates of the Caribbean coming to the park a couple years later. Nostromo was another concept that was kind of kicked around for Magic Kingdom. Yes, if that name sounds familiar, that's because Nostromo was going to be an alien encounter, for lack of a better word, in Tomorrowland. Of course, eventually that was deemed too scary, and Disney built their own alien and opened Extraterrestrial Alien Encounter, which is now gone. There were rumors that a Cinderella dark ride would have been built in New Fantasyland, believe it or not. That area is now where Seven Dwarfs Mine Train now sits. But the area was going to have a Cinderella dark ride, a Cinderella meet and greet, and a Princess Aurora meet and greet. Also in the original plans for New Fantasyland was Pixie Hollow. That would have stood where Storybook Circus now stands, and there would have been a dark ride and meet and greets for Tinkerbell and other fairies. In the 1990s, Disney decided they were going to build two brand new mountains in Magic Kingdom. They were going to be Bald Mountain and Fire Mountain. Now, these are two concepts that I kind of want to get into on a future episode of the show, so I'm not going to go too far into detail here, other than, guess what, they weren't built. All right, well, how about what was never built at Epcot? Well, there was going to be a simulated bullet train ride in the Japan Pavilion in Epcot. Then there was thought to be the Godzilla bullet train ride that would come to the same pavilion. There was going to be a bobsled ride that was kind of, I mentioned it earlier, like the Matterhorn built at the Switzerland Pavilion, of course, both of which were never built. How about this one? Time Racers was going to be built inside Spaceship Earth, the sphere of Spaceship Earth. That was going to be a high-tech thrill ride through history. And I, for one, am very happy that they didn't replace Spaceship Earth with that. A Junior Autopia was planned to be added over to the new test track for a new transportation pavilion. Obviously, that never happened. There was to be a Rhine River cruise in the Germany Pavilion. Of course, the entrance is still there. And if you knock on that wall, you'll hear that it's hollow. If you don't know where that is, shoot me an email to phil@eartotheirtravel.com. I'll tell you where it is. There was going to be a Thames River cruise in the UK pavilion, a people mover that was going to connect interventions east and west. The Incredible Journey Within, that was kind of a precursor to Body Wars that was going to be built. So yeah, there was lots of stuff, all kinds of cool attractions that weren't built for Epcot. Hollywood Studios was the same way, right? I already mentioned Baby Herman's Runaway Buggy. There was the Benny the Cab ride that wasn't built. Dick Tracy's Crime Stoppers was going to be built. I think if Dick Tracy was a bigger hit than it was, which it wasn't, that was going to be an enhanced motion vehicle attraction through the streets of Chicago. It was, of course, based on that film, Dick Tracy. I already mentioned the Great Muppet Movie Ride. Get this one, and this one deserves another episode all to its own. The Hotel Mel. This was a comedic dark ride based on the humor of Mel Brooks. This eventually became the Twilight Zone Tower of Terror. But just imagine for a second what Mel Brooks could have done with Tower of Terror. Also on that site where Tower of Terror is now, there was going to be a Geyser Mountain attraction. That would have been a drop tower and roller coaster kind of combo ride. There was supposed to be a Nightmare Before Christmas attraction. So upset that didn't make it in. There was going to be a Rocketeer attraction, of course, based on the film The Rocketeer. That was a jetpack themed flying attraction, but the Rocketeer did not do well enough for its own attraction, of course. I already mentioned the Toontown Trolley. There was to be a silent film stunt show. They would have had to be very, very quiet while doing that stunt show because, of course, they were silent films. I'm kidding. Then, of course, there was going to be the 3D Villains attraction that was thought to be a replacement for the Great Movie Ride. But, of course, we are not getting that one. We are getting Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway instead. Lastly, I wanted to talk about Disney's Animal Kingdom, and Dragon Tower was one that was going to be a dragon-themed dueling roller coaster in Beastly Kingdom in Animal Kingdom. That's a lot of kingdoms in one sentence. Anyway, of course, Beastly Kingdom, like I mentioned earlier, wasn't built, and laid off Disney Imagineers took the idea over to The Enemy, that other park down the road, and it became Dueling Dragons. Quest for the Unicorn was a hedge maze that was coming to Beastly Kingdom. Guess what? Those Imagineers took that idea to The Enemy as well. Fantasia Gardens was going to be a boat ride in Disney's Animal Kingdom. In Beastly Kingdom, that one was going to be kind of based around the ideas of the animals in Disney's film Fantasia. That never happened. Get this, the Tree of Life was originally not going to be a Tree of Life at all. It was going to be a double-decker carousel that would have been the icon, the central hub for that park. Of course, that never happened, and we got the Tree of Life as it is today with the It's Tough to Be a Bug show kind of built inside of that. There was a rumored Tarzan Rainforest roller coaster, an excavator attraction, which was going to be a wooden runaway minecart through an abandoned dinosaur dig site. That was planned for Dinoland USA, but again, due to budget cuts, that was replaced by Primeval Whirl. There was going to be a junior version, a smaller kid-friendly version of Dinosaur that was also cut due to budget cuts. And Dinosaur, or Countdown to Extinction, was originally supposed to be a much bigger, kind of more ambitious attraction. But that was, again, cut. This is like a running gag here. That was cut due to budget cuts as well. And instead, they kind of copied the track layout and the vehicles from the Indiana Jones adventure out in Disneyland, copied it, put in dinosaurs instead of Indiana Jones, and voila, brand new attraction. And that is going to do it for this week's Ear to There Disney podcast, Walt Disney World Word of the Week. Thank you so much for listening. As always, I really appreciate it. This was another long one. I'm looking at, 30 minutes here? So that's a long time. But I hope you enjoyed it. I had a lot to get to in that show. And I have a lot to get to in the future about Disney attractions and shows and lands and hotels and restaurants, all kinds of stuff that wasn't built. I hope you keep listening. I'll go over, my plan is to go over all of those in the future. Thank you for listening. Thanks to Bob Gurr once again for answering another question on the show. And thank you to Sean once again for sending that question in. So I hope you enjoyed the show, and if you did, please just share it with someone, tell somebody about it. I'd really appreciate it. You know, there's another person that you know that's a true Disney nerd like you and I. Maybe they'll really enjoy this episode, so please share it with them. I really appreciate it, and thank you so much in advance for doing that. Okay, just remember, there will be a new episode of the Ear to There Disney podcast, Walt Disney World Word of the Week, each and every Wednesday morning, as well as a regular episode of the Ear to There Disney podcast each and every Monday morning. So until next time, thank you again so much for listening. Have yourself just an amazing week. Bye-bye.